Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, dear listeners. Welcome to Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart, and this is a preview of sorts edition ahead of Sunday's unearthly 3 o'clock kickoff versus Burnley. Mill, of course, with a sudden burst of form of late, looking to try and get points off of the second best team in the league at the moment, Burnley. The current recipients of Zian Fleming's talents, though he won't be playing on Saturday, we've been loan barred or whatever the loan tied, whatever the expression is. But dear listeners, on this show, we're not going to give you a true preview, to be quite honest with you. We're going to be looking backwards. Now, I've dug out a fixture from 1972, and I've dug it out from a fascinating flickr.com website, and I'm going to stick the link in. A guy called Miles McLagan has posted a load of old football programs, football magazines, England programs, Scottish games, you name it, magazines. It is all sorts is on this flickr.com site, and one of the programs posted on, they haven't got an exhaustive list of programs, but you do get a selection from various seasons of the past, one of which is Mill versus Burnley, played on Saturday the 28th of October 1972, a game that I would have been at. I can't say I can remember this game, but I would have been there. The 72-73 season was my first full season of following the lines. I began going in the glory days, the kind of apocalyptic glory days of the end of the 71-72 season, which turned out not to be glory after all, promotion, and then suddenly we weren't promoted. We're back in Division 2. So the 72-73 season had a touch of the expression after the Lord Mayor's show, to coin a phrase. It started off fairly poorly. I think there was just a collective hangover from the exhilaration of thinking we'd been promoted to the First Division just a few months earlier in April 72, to having to come back again in Division 2 in August, 4 months later. Began all right with a win against Hull City, but then we started losing games. And we went into this particular game on the 28th of October in 21st position in the table, so in the relegation spot. So it was a real dip in form from from the heights of just a few months before. We were suddenly down at the other end of the table, looking over our shoulders, really. Mill versus Burnley. If it would finish as a 1-1 draw, the Millwall team that day is a classic lineup of Brian King in goal. Then we've got Brian Brown, Harry Cripps as the two fullbacks, right back and left back. In the centre, Alan Dorney, Barry Kitchener. Midfield, there'll be Dennis Burnett and Eamon Dunphy. We've got Doug Alder. I've listed it as a three-man midfield. It might have been 4. Gordon Bolland, I've played further forward. Alf Wood and Derek Possey, a brief game where the two hot strikers of our time, in the 70s anyway, Alf Wood and Derek Possey were in the same side. Alf Wood was signed as a replacement, really, for Barry Bridges, whose goals with Possey had got us so close to the promotion just a few months before. But Possey was unsettled and would move on later on this season. We'll come back to Possey and his movements. Bolland, Wood and Possey up front. Now, as I've said, it was a disappointing season. Would come good in the end. We were certainly struggling in the opening phase of the season. This game was being played against Burnley, who were high flying. So I've got a report here. It's a 1-1 draw. Millwall 1, Burnley one, played on the 28th of October 1972. I would have just turned 12 years old, and I would have been there at this game, but I can't tell you that I remember it, dear listeners. No point in trying to pretend I do. I don't. But I got a report from the Sunday Mirror, the 29th of October. Millwall manager Benny Fenton watched his lowly battlers, Millwall lowly, ease their troubles of a deserved draw, and then said, "This is it. We've turned the tide now," says Benny. Goes on, "We could have had a hatful. Burnley are at the top of the table and we're at the bottom, yet we were easily the better side. It does not make sense," says Benny. When we were last in that position last season, and when did we ever boot the ball over the stand like some of these Burnley players did today? So they must have been trying to get to full time under pressure. Millwall's anxiety to climb from the cellar regions of the division showed in their finishing. Last season, the chances created would have settled the matter before half time, says Tony Stenson for the Daily Mirror. With Millwall attacking without luck and Burnley defending in numbers, it never turned out to be the game it promised. But there was enough effort to show that Fenton is right in his claim about Millwall's future. Doherty, Collins and James all went into referee Clive Thomas's notebook. Very famous referee, Clive Thomas. We'll come back to him. As Burnley stretched their 100% record to 15 games, unbeaten record, that must mean. Burnley's defence was kept busy by the Lions' attack, which was constantly being fed by Eamon Dunphy, the little Irishman, playing his first game after walking out on Millwall for the first 11 weeks of the season. He was a tempestuous character, Dunphy, and it would leave us the following season, I believe. I think he was still with us for the whole of 72, 73, but I think he would move on 73, 74 when he fell out of favour. He was an easy man to fall out of favour with, let's be honest. Stenson says, "It was no surprise when Millwall went ahead in the 38th minute. Alf Wood sent a through ball for Doug Alder to chase, but Burnley defender Doherty got there, but he hit a weak pass to the advancing Alan Stevenson, their goalkeeper. And when Alder challenged the goal, the ball broke loose for Derek Posse to hit the ball into an empty net. Burnley's best move of the match saw them equalise in the 55th minute. Fletcher was the scorer after James and Collins had shots both blocked." So, yeah, 1-1 draw. Some names in that team there. Clive Thomas was a very famous referee. He was the referee for the game. Famously, he blew for full time in a World Cup match, Brazil versus Sweden, if memory serves. I'm just looking up his Wikipedia entry because I remember thinking at the time it didn't seem right, but it was a famous incident. Brazil would have won the game. I believe it was a draw. The corner was taken dead on the second of 45 minutes. And whilst the ball was it a shot, a volley from the edge of the penalty? It went flying into the net, but the referee had blown the whistle as the ball was in the air and said that was full time. The goal didn't count. He was known as Clive the Book. And as Wikipedia puts it here, he was the only man to send off the notorious Liverpudlian Tommy Smith. This is for speaking out of turn rather than foul play. He was a man who was known as the hard man of football at the time. During a long and sometimes controversial career as a referee in the old English First Division, he was known as the Book due to his strict interpretation of the laws of the game. He was an early example of some of the modern referees, listeners, in my opinion, who regarded themselves as the star of the event rather than being an enabler for the footballers to show their skills and their talents. That's who people have paid to watch, not the referee. And Clive Thomas, I always got a sense, was an irritating man. Famously, he was from Treorchy in Wales. He's still alive, according to Wikipedia. Probably better edit those bent comments. Case. He was elected as the ceremonial position of High Sheriff of Mid Glamorgan in 2005. And he lives in Porthcawl, Wales. There it is. In the 1978 World Cup in Argentina, it wasn't 74, it was 78. He officiated the round one game between Brazil and Sweden, in which he infamously blew the whistle for full time during a play from a corner kick, so that a potential late goal by Zico, which would have given Brazil the 2-1 win, could not be scored. There we are. Clive Thomas, anyway, he was the referee for this game between Millwall and Burnley. As I said, it's a difficult season for the Lions. We would improve. We would go into the season in the relegation zones up until really 22nd there. Look, I'm saying look to you can't see what I'm looking at. First rule of radio is don't do things like that. 22nd up until November the 11th, where we beat Brighton. In fact, we had a series of wins, Brighton, QPR and Huddersfield, which took us up the table. We would finish in the end 11th in the table. It actually came good in the second part of the season. But certainly the opening half was a real hangover from the failure to get promoted just a few months beforehand. So 72, 73. Now, as I've said already, there is a programme on Miles McLagan's website, and it's well worth a look. I'm going to stick the link into into the show notes for this, but let me find it. There we are. So I'm looking at the program, 7 pence, and I remember these design programs because, as I said, I would have bought it, and I remember the front cover, which had I think it might be Ray Goddard in goal for Orient. We'd played Orient a few weeks before this fixture, and there's a picture of Harry Cripps at the far post and Alf Wood, number 9, was putting the ball towards the danger area there. 7 pence. Matchday magazine incorporating an insert magazine called League Football, and Miles does have copies of that. League Football was a great magazine, actually. It really, really bumped up the Matchday programme into a full-scale magazine. It was produced by the Football League, and it was like a variety magazine of all articles about many clubs across the divisions, because that would have included the top flight, no Premier League back then. So you could see a piece on, I don't know, Carlisle as well as, say, Liverpool or Manchester United and, for example, Exeter City or something. You had plenty of reading in there, plenty of points of interest, and they would insert it into the matchday programme. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through the match day program for this fixture against Burnley, if it's okay. The interesting managers' notes. Benny Fenton there, always an elegant looking man. I always thought he looked like I mean, obviously at the age of 12, everyone looks old, don't they? But he looked like he was this kind of. Yeah, for me as a kid, I mean, we never spoke to the man, obviously, but he always had a slightly unapproachable um, look about him. I could be wrong. I remember he used to, he did like a 20 questions thing where he posted his interests in life outside football, as having a nice glass of wine. Wine. No one drank wine on our estate. Having a nice glass of wine and doing a good crossword. Now, we did do crosswords. Whether they were good ones or not, I don't know. Whether they were Benny's idea of what a good crossword would be, I don't know. But it did strike me as impossibly sophisticated. He refers to quite a lot of nonsense that have been printed recently about our forthcoming League Cup fixture with either Spurs or Middlesbrough. We'd drawn, in the end, we would get Spurs. And there'd been some nonsense apparently about the dates set for the fixture. And Benny says here, these are the simple facts. We stated to the Football League that our wish was to adhere to the rules of the competition and play the game on the date specified. The league supported our view and instructed all parties to play on the competition's appointed date. So I've got to look that up, haven't I, listeners? That's something that's, really struck me. So anyway, I found this little explanation piece. This is actually the Wolverhampton newspaper. League Cup protest. Tottenham and Middlesbrough have been ordered by the Football League to play their League Cup replay at Ayerson Park on Monday, October the 30th, 2 days before the date of the fourth rounds. We insisted that Spurs played 2 days before they were due to meet us at White Hart Lane on, that'd be 2 days later, that'd be November the 1st. Stan Anderson, Middlesbrough manager, blamed Millwall chief Benny Fenton for this fact. So I think he had the ump with Benny. It wouldn't do us any good, though, dear listeners. It would have been wonderful if we'd have come good there. But yeah, they had to play on the 30th. There we are. The League Cup round 4 fixture between Millwall and Spurs would indeed take place on Wednesday, the 1st of November, just a couple of days after the replay. This is a different era. I mean, kids, this is replays. This has all been done away with under the. I watched a Caribou Cup game last night. We went straight to penalties at 90 minutes, let alone having replays, and then insisting that Tottenham come back 2 days later. Anyway, we got beat at Spurs 2-0 in 1972, November the 1st. So that would be the end of that. Goals by Martin Peters and Steve Perryman. They'd been a full-strength side back then. League Cup used to be taken much more seriously than it is now. Anyway, back to our match day program. So Benny sets the record straight there. We're just insisting that they stick to the rules of the competition, which is always good. So yeah, one thing that does strike you as you look through the match day program, match day magazine. I never understood why no one ever called it the program officially. It was always called the match day magazine. I suppose it had more pizzazz to it. I don't know. There's an article here, a lot of content in it, a lot of reading, words, lots and lots of words, not many pictures, lots of words. And this piece goes on about the press's obsession with the seamy side of the game, in other words, hooliganism. They refer to an incident after a Charlton versus Watford game where Blackheath Station was left a shambles, but Millwall were saying that there was over enthusiastic reporting. I don't know why we're interested. Maybe it was Millwall getting involved. I don't know. This was the way of the 70s listeners. I probably shouldn't say any more, really, should I? So anyway, they're basically Millwall saying that the press are always looking for sensation, and that incident wasn't all that bad. I think that's the way I read that. Flicking on, so yeah, talk division news article about the rest of the division. Teams struggling to get good gates apart from Aston Villa. It says here attendances are a matter of much concern. Teams are struggling apart from Aston Villa to get good gates. Even those clubs that are breathing down each other's neck at the top. So yeah, hooliganism was starting to become a real thing in the world of football generally, and it would become ever increasing really up until the 1980s. But we're not going to dwell on that. We've already speculated, probably unwisely, about what happened at Charlton v Watford at Blackheath. So I should probably move on. Club information: Millwall have just put out a new single. 45 kids. We've cut a disc. This is hip talk. A single. Director Alan Jackman, producer Peter Sames, and through an intermediary, Pat Barlow, who's a Mill fanatic, apparently, Pat Barlow. And we've cut a disc. I believe this was the Ballad of Harry Cripps. I don't think it was the Let Them Come. I don't think so. We put out a single, the Ballad of Harry Cripps, and something else. Maybe someone out there might know. Anyway, they've got the Decca. It's on the Decca label. The record's number is F13350. There we are. So they say you've probably heard it at our last home game. Listen to it again today, and we feel sure that you'll agree it's the best club song you've ever heard. That's quite a big call, isn't it? Oh dear. And then we go through the rest of the program. Look, it's me. They used to take a picture of people in the crowd and put their picture with a circle. And if it was you got a ticket for the next league game. Beat the clock. Beat the clock. I once won Beat the Clock, listeners. Did you ever win it? I did. I got my name in the program. Full address back then, no mucking about. It was your name and your full address. And I remember I think it got split however many goals there were. If you got the exact minute and second of the goal, which I did. Right long shot. I can't remember how much it cost now. But I got about 30 quid, which seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. I was about 18 when I won it. So goal times for the game v Orient. So yeah, 63 minutes and 2 seconds. You had to get it bang on. No, don't go there along with 63 minutes and 1 second. That's not good enough. Beat the clock. And a few items from the Lions shop. That used to be a kind of wooden hut on Coldblow Lane. Not exactly an array of articles that would interest the modern day fan, dear listeners. But they got stuff here for key rings for 20p. I bought a badge out of there, and it was the most disappointing badge I think I've ever had because having dabbled a little in the creation of badges for sale, I now know that you have what's called a cloisonne style, which is actually quite a nice finish. It's like it's based on church, not quite stained glass, but some of the finishes they've used in churches over the years. And it's like a polished finish, and if you get your design right, it's quite nice and effective. But Millwall back then, and the badge that I bought, which is probably this one here for 20p, rosette's 18p. There was a metal lapel badge, 20p. There we are, probably the one I bought. But basically, it was a bit of plastic stuck onto a little bit of metal, and they kind of glued it on there, and it wasn't quite centered, and it looked cheap. I mean, I was quite proud of it at the time, but I was also vaguely aware that I'd bought something that was, a very cheaply produced item. So there we are. Lion's Shop.
Achtung, Millwall.
Welcoming Burnley to the Den. So we've gone through the Millwall team. I'm going to come back to Derek Posse in a little bit, but I just wanted to mention some of the players that Burnley had playing for them were quite big names in their time. Alan Stevenson in goal was a little bit like our own Brian King, who played in this game. Fringes of the England setup. Could have been the England goalkeeper. There's a lot of really good goalkeepers around at this time in the game, and I include Brian King, would also say the same thing, that he was more than good enough to have been the England goalkeeper. But the problem was back then, it was the back end of Gordon Banks, his career World Cup winner. And also you had the likes of Ray Clements and Peter Shilton, who I think was seen as very much the rising star. And that was your competition to break into the team. So players like Alan Stevenson, there were Joe Corrigan from Manchester City, mentioned Brian King. They just couldn't break into the main team. So yeah, England under-23 international, a very safe hand of the ball, who gives a good confidence to his teammates. And he was a good goalkeeper. Keith Newton was playing for Burnley. Keith Newton played in the Mexico World Cup for England and was a seriously good midfielder. But I think again, it was not unknown for decent level players, internationals. It had been just 2 years after Mexico 1970 for him to be playing for Burnley in the second division. So there's a nice little Martin Dobson, another good player mentioned here. Played for England at under 23 level. He did. I think he played at full international level too. Not many games, but he did. So there we are. Nice little piece on some pictures there. Leighton James, I think he passed away quite recently. Leighton James, who was mentioned in the Daily Mirror reporters for the assist, I suppose you'd call it now in modern talk. And he's a Welsh international. I think he passed away quite recently. Leighton James. So I'm just flicking through the article by Des O'Connor, which is really about Millwall. And here Des has his own piece, claimed to be a Millwall fan, but it didn't seem to ever mention us much from memory, and this one doesn't either. This is, there's nothing new in this life, listeners. We've not long had Brexit. This one's referring to the entry of Britain into the common market, the European Union as it became in time. And he's mentioning the age-old soccer argument for a European Super League will gain momentum. So that's never gone away, is it? I suppose the newly revamped Champions League is a European Super League of sorts. So anyway, Des burbles on about how many clubs can afford to travel to and from the continent almost every week. Exclamation mark, question mark. Probably now it's not so difficult, but back then might have been more expensive, I suppose. I don't know. There's a great piece here. Saturday Crowd. Now, this is another article by the club, and it's asking a question. I wonder if you ever get an answer to this. Does anyone know the identity of someone calling himself, or perhaps herself, Watchful Eye in capitals? Watchful Eye. This person with a cloak and dagger pseudonym has been in the habit of sending us, Millwall, postcards from time to time, making dire forecasts as to our fate. He or she produces statistics meant to serve as a comparison, when we all know that what happens one season seldom happens the next. In any event, if someone has anything to say, why do you remain anonymous? The club are asking. Fortunately, people such as Watchful Eye are the exception rather than the rule amongst our correspondents. When we receive complaints, it's got a very tone to it, isn't it? The right tone. When we receive complaints, like we do, we like to know from whom we are dealing with, such as Mr. D.W. Lawrence of Dyson House. I won't name his address just in case he still lives there. Dyson House. Who's taken us, who's full address here, listeners, who's taken us to task for changing the kick-off time for the midweek reserve fixture versus Orient from the evening kick-off, used to be 7 p.m, I think, to a 2:30 in the afternoon kick-off. We have every sympathy with Mr. Lawrence and his friends, who we've named publicly. But economics govern most of our activities, says the club, and that's it. And they actually got a list of, quite interesting, got a list of costings for a recent reserve game against Southend. played as an evening game. Gross receipts £15.25 from 105 people in attendance for the evening game. 105 turned out to watch Millwall reserves v Southend. Expenditure, which included floodlighting, was £30.80, which left a net deficit of £15.55. Versus against, so we were down £15 by playing Southend in the evening. Whereas Orient played in daylight. Gross receipts £13.50 from 85 people turning out. Expenditure was £15.90, so we were just down £2.40. So as you can see, the deficit was considerably reduced. Apologies for those fireworks going off in the background. It's either Diwali or Guy Fawkes. The deficit was reduced. Difference in attendance was 20. Difference in loss was £13.50 in our favour. There we are. So show yourself, watchful eye. Were you watchful eye, listener? Do you know who it was? Tell me privately. I won't disclose it. Interesting approach to match day, because obviously match day programs have gone now. Now you've got the unofficial one being produced by Chrissy Bethel, of course, which is for sale. Good effort as well. Well worth, and I think Chris donates the money to charity, which is great. Good on him, because it's a lot of effort having made a physically printed item for sale. It's not easy. It's a lot of hard work. But anyway, going back to this match day program, it's got quite a serious tone to it. You got that kind of passive aggressive piece I've just described about watchful eye sending in postcards. This is another little article of what would you call these little one-liners, really? What the eye does not see, the heart does not grieve. The TV eye is a seemingly unnecessary adjunct to the human variety and has turned grievance into downright mourning. That's in the Millwall programme, listeners. Turned grievance into downright mourning. What that relates to, I suppose, it's the effect of television on the sport. There we are. But there's other ones like that. You've got these kind of like, I suppose you might get them in a Christmas crack, and they used to stick them in the matchday programme. Pauline McGrath. Is she still alive? Pauline? She used to be a regular, she used to be on the Mill Supporters Club. She used to organise away trips. And here she is writing an article for the matchday programme, Lioness by Pauline McGrath. Lioness is in suitably fancy font, curly font, ladies font. She mentions Harry Cripps here. And also she's advocating filming of the terraces to try and identify violence in the majority of ground. I don't know, Pauline might have gone down a rocky road here. She knows from her own experience, which is limited to Millwall matches, but on my travels around the country, I've not seen one real act of violence or hooliganism from either Millwall or supporters of other teams. I suppose if you want to find it, you can find it, like Pauline. But anyway, there we are. Filming the crowd, Pauline advocates. Oh dear. Matchday action, nice picture of Harry Cripps. I will stick this online when I put this piece out. Actually, it's against Orient, and he's in the action in the Orient penalty. Ray Goddard over the back there playing for the O's, and so it goes on. Brian Brown, nice piece on Brian Brown. A good player. He was mentioned. Obviously, started in this game here. Came to us from Chelsea. He was kind of a good, solid fullback, really. He never had the love that Harry Cripps generated, but he certainly did a very, very good job for us. Most of his career spent at the Den. Brian has a propensity to move. Propensity is a good word. Didn't muck about in their vocabulary then, did they? Not with that last one about what the eye doesn't see. Anyway, Brian Brown has a propensity to move up behind the attack, and with a powerful shot has popped in some useful goals. Great pictures of him there. Brian Brown, good player, remember him well. There's fixture lists, we move through it. There's an overhead kick from Alf Wood, great player. And then away travel, railway, road. No Google back then, listeners. You had to get the directions out of the matchday programme. And that was, that would have to do you. Future fixtures. Oh, yeah, we've got Tottenham away. We're picking up a quantity of tickets for Tottenham on Monday, and these will be on sale, physically at sale at the Den on Tuesday all day, and Wednesday up till 3:00. The price of these tickets will be £1. £1 to get in to watch Millwall versus Spurs, which we'd lose 2-0. And there's the team list on the back there. We've covered most of that. already. Oh, there's Clive Thomas from Treorchy. I'll have to be careful about what I say about him if he's still alive. Can't libel the dead, but you can libel the living, dear listeners. There we are. So yeah, Derek Possey. I just wanted to mention Derek Possey. I don't know if we've mentioned him. Obviously mentioned him over the course of these many shows that I've done over time. But I don't know if we've ever really mentioned him, so to speak. 87 goals for the Lions from 1967 to 1970. He was born in Southwark, 1946. Played 245 games for Millwall. Came to us from Spurs. He started his career at Spurs, March 1963. Joined us for 25 grand, and then would move on not long after this fixture, actually. There's a picture of him when he signed for Crystal Palace. I found the picture. Bizarrely, they got him in the bath. I don't know what's going on there. He must be celebrating having a slice of the £115,000 transfer fee, which was big money back then. Derek Possey joined Crystal Palace in a £115,000 deal yesterday. This is a report in the Daily Mirror, dated the 5th of January 1974. I do remember him moving on. Shame, obviously great goal scorer. He never really took off at Crystal Palace, in all honesty. They were a first division side still in 73. They were relegated the following season, and it never really worked out for Poss there. He would score some goals there, but nothing on the same scale or with the same adulation that he received at Millwall, in my opinion. And he would leave them. So he joined them in January 73 for £115,000. Leading Millwall fans to boo chairman Mickey Purser in a game in November when the news was announced that they agreed to transfer this Possey. I think he wanted to move on. I think he asked to be transfer listed. But anyway, Purser caught it, as did Benny Fenton, who also got booed as well. Well, why not? Boo everyone. Apparently Benny stood up against the game against Brighton. Stood up and wagged his finger at the section of the crowd. That would be good, wouldn't it? Having your manager wag your finger at you. But yeah, so a boo for Purser for allowing the sale to take place. After joining Palace in January 73, he'd move on to Orient in July 74. So just about a year and a half at Palace. Then on to the Vancouver Whitecaps. We would actually get some success in America. He was a member of the Soccer Bowl, the championship of the NASL, or the North American Soccer League. Played for the Vancouver Whitecaps. He finished his career after stints in St Patrick's in Ireland and briefly at Dartford. After his post-game career, ran a soccer school in Canada and has been heavily involved in coaching in British Columbia. And that's from Neil's book. There we are, dear listeners. So Derek Possey, great player, one of the greats. He held the record goal scorer for many, many years until superseded by Sheringham and then Harris. But a mainstay of the side during that near-miss promotion season. So there we are, dear listeners. Millwall won, Burnley won, 28th of October 1972. I just turned 12 years old. Don't remember the game. Got to be honest with you. Wished I did. Don't. So I won't make out that I would have been there, but I don't remember it. I think we're at the end of our little bit of nostalgia there, dear listeners. Big thank you to you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy these kinds of shows. We'll be back at the weekend after the modern day versions of Millwall and Burnley play out on Sunday afternoon. Who comes up with these fixtures? There we go. To the next edition of Achtung Millwall, dear listeners, from me, Nick Hart. It's Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.